Welcome back to Pop Dissected. Today, we're going to be talking about British singer Ed Sheeran and what has led to his widespread popularity and ability to capture the global market. To preface, this question on his fame shouldn't imply he's undeserving of it, but in the wake of internet memes and an inexplicable disdain for the artist, many do wonder, why is Ed Sheeran so popular? With 4 #1 studio records on the UK albums chart, 3 on the Billboard 200, and his third record Divide, topping the charts in 25 countries, and Ed Sheeran having earned 150 million sales worldwide, he has become one of the best-selling artists of all time. Before we begin, be sure to check out my Patreon where I'll be posting exclusive content only members can receive. I'm getting closer to 5 patrons and can't wait to share brand new, exciting content with you all. And be sure to drop a like, subscribe, and turn on that notification bell for more future content on all your favorite pop stars. With a plethora of EPs released prior to his debut record, Plus, Ed Sheeran would begin to gain recognition with his debut single A-Team in 2011, which would earn him his first Grammy nomination in 2013. He would go on to tour Plus for over 2 years, beginning in October of 2011 before ending in November of 2013. His final leg of the tour spanned the entirety of 2013, venturing throughout the United States. The bulk of his touring would have him serve as the opening act on Taylor Swift's Red Tour, which, believe it or not, served as one of the catalysts to his breakout into a broader market. Touring on 68 of 86 total shows, all of which were sold out, and Taylor Swift's popularity surging with her critically acclaimed record, there's no doubt his inclusion on this tour boosted his popularity in the States. And that's not to say Taylor Swift is responsible for Ed Sheeran's fame. The purpose of having an opening act on your tour is to introduce audiences to an up-and-coming artist to help them gain a broader fan base, and this worked for Ed Sheeran. It also helped that Ed Sheeran was featured on a track off of Red, Everything Has Changed, which he performed with Taylor Swift at the shows he opened for, making him a staple for the tour. However, this never eclipsed his own popularity, and he was never overshadowed by Taylor's stardom. Following the tour, Ed Sheeran would see his award nominations at nearly every event start to increase, beginning in 2014, proving he was able to stand on his own 2 feet. For my second point, let's talk about the genre exploration seen across all of Ed Sheeran's efforts. How would you describe it? Is he pop, acoustic, folk, indie, or R&B? Well, you wouldn't be wrong to say he's really all of the above, which has worked greatly in his favor. From the start, Ed Sheeran never bound himself to one specific type of genre that he's had to experiment solely within. One can argue none of his records present some unheard of or unexpected genre throughout, because Ed Sheeran can dip his toes in and cultivate sounds that transcend one genre. He's able to open himself up to a wider range of listeners. Whether it's the soul-led Thinking Out Loud, the poppy dancehall Shape of You, or the R&B-driven Don't, Ed Sheeran can cater to most types of listeners. While he experiments within the territories of genres he's established in, he's never pulled a 180 or alienated his listeners in any way. He changes his genre style in a way one could interpret as a safe exploration. Continuing on with his music, the third point I like to talk about is the content found across Ed Sheeran's music. His music generally isn't really offensive, explicit, provocative, or controversial. His lyricism, though on occasion met with some rebuttal by critics, is able to capture vivid memories in one's lifetime, allowing audiences to intimately connect to the tracks and to each other. It may seem as if it's no special feat to write relatable lyrics, and while that may be generally true, there truthfully aren't that many artists who can consistently channel a self-introspection with many of their tracks, whether it's about love, heartbreak, or the mundanity of life. It's blunt songwriting from an unfiltered perspective that seemingly isn't catered nor engineered to calculate smash single one after the other. While many artists let their walls down to reflect different sides of them, I'm sure many of us can decipher when a record has specific tracks that were engineered to be hit singles. Now, there's nothing wrong with that by any means. Artists go after and prioritize their successes very differently. But I think why people gravitate towards Ed Sheeran is that none of his music comes off in that vein. But let me ask, do you think Ed Sheeran's music appears to be these naturally built tracks? Or are there any that stand out to you that you could say were designed to be big chart-chasing singles? Under those pretenses, we could perceive that Ed Sheeran isn't an artist that's chasing trends or attempting to capitalize in certain ways. There isn't particularly anything about his releases nor career that come across as designed or calculated. And I think this brings up an interesting point of conversation. He's been able to achieve incredible success seemingly by just being himself. Him on stage with a guitar. One has to wonder, when it comes to the male artist as opposed to the female artist, we see female artists bring specific spectacles, sounds, and sights for certain eras to rebrand themselves in a new, exciting way, and that in turn can be a factor that contributes to their longevity in the industry. Do you believe this is something that female artists enjoy more and are better at, or is something they have to do in addition to all their other talents they possess? In no means am I insinuating the female artist needs to radically differentiate each album cycle to be successful, but it's inarguable that many of them do. But why do you think female artists need or should have to do that, when it doesn't seem like male artists have wildly different eras in terms of genre, color palette, and music videos? On to my fourth point, let's discuss Ed Sheeran as a person. Described as laid back, easygoing, and chill by most, this makes Ed Sheeran pretty accessible to audiences. Plenty of times he has walked the red carpet just wearing plain clothes. He instantly becomes more relatable that way, as someone who could be a friend or a neighbor perhaps. In interviews, Ed Sheeran comes across as extremely approachable. He doesn't have a condescending air to him, nor does he ever try to insinuate he's some untouchable big shot, from what I've gathered at least. He's down to earth, which is evident in his live touring. Though this may be an extension of my point about female artists that I made, Ed Sheeran doesn't have to bring a feast of props, costuming, and stage design for his touring. Whether that's for any alternate speculation, I'll let you all discuss in the comments. But his intimate charisma is felt in a giant stadium, united through various songs for a horde of different reasonings. He has this mass appeal because he hasn't shoehorned himself into one genre. He writes straight from the mind, and put very simply by this article, is like a childhood friend who grew up and became famous, which I'd say wouldn't be a far off way to describe Ed Sheeran as a person. In addition to his broad likability, Ed Sheeran is also extremely charitable and philanthropic. He raised over £40,000 for sex workers, emphasizing the importance of humanity that we all must remember. He's reported to also give away lots of his clothes as well, and as a celebrity who has tons of money, he dresses very casually. Thus, when he gives away these clothes, they could be worn by literally anyone who receives them on any given day. He launched his own foundation towards the end of 2019 in order to provide grants for those wishing to learn and play music. Without a doubt, Ed Sheeran is an extremely likable and talented musician who has never found himself in the hot seat for some outlandish controversy or horrible act. His Divide Tour is literally the highest grossing tour of all time, earning nearly $800 million with nearly 9 million attendees. If that doesn't prove something, then I'm not sure what will. But what do you all think of Ed Sheeran? Has he earned his success, or do you think he's just overhyped? Let me know down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Be sure to drop a like, subscribe, and turn on that notification bell for more future content on all your favorite pop stars. And be sure to check out my Patreon.